to when the United States was way up here economically and everybody else was in melting ruins. We created this structure, and the structure has outlived its usefulness in many ways. And to try to tweak this,
we're the richest
no
country in the
shuts
world,
down for
Rick.
maintenance is not going to be. Wait, what did you say?
Because we're the richest country in the world. We came out of the pandemic faster. We had better growth. We are the most dynamic economy in the world.
Are you saying that you can't control?
And much of that money we spent was in debt. The debt was financed by foreigners. They enabled us just like the Fed enabled us with those capital accounts. I'm saying there is a dark side to the trade deficit. In a different way, I think that Trump looks at it. I look at it like it does. It does underscore and underpin a type of financial behavior that in the long term hurts us.
41% of the S&P 500 firms' revenues come from abroad. That's according to Apollo. So if you're going to restructure that, it is going to your point about them maybe not having allegiances necessarily to the United States, it is going to restructure that in a very large way if these tariffs stay in place.
And the real question is what happens, by the way, to their business in all those other countries.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that's the thing that I think is sort of being missed in this. Forget about the retaliatory tariffs. I just think that if there are consumers who are going to say we don't want to do business with U.S. businesses, and I think with the services companies specifically, it gets even tougher.
We're the consumers of the world. That's the one thing Howard Lutnick was correct about, in my opinion. We're the consumers of the world. Okay? If people want to make stuff and they don't want to sell it to us, woe be to them.
I'm confused because if people make a decision to buy something from abroad, isn't that part of the freedom and independence people have?
They don't make that decision.
Things?
They make the decision to buy what's cheap, and that's the problem. Okay, we're going to make it so it's not artificially cheap anymore. Every day, Kmart low prices had a dark side for the American economy.
No, but here's my question, Rick. What about all of the folks in China and India and other places who've been buying Nikes, who've been buying Starbucks, who've been going to McDonald's?
Okay, why does Nike sell a pair of gym shoes for $200 and they have to make it in China where they pay people peanuts? It doesn't make sense from the get-go.
Wait, now you care about Chinese workers, Rick?
Build them over here. Okay?
Now
we
you
have
care about the
unions,
Chinese
we have
worker.
people that make more money, we have benefits, we cost more to make stuff. But there's a reason for that.
Because people bring they buy something cheap and they have money to buy other things. That's how it works, Rick, over time. You want us to go back to the horse and buggy?
And that's why Trump's reversing it, because we have $37 trillion worth of how it works.
I'm confused, Rick. Is your problem the deficit or is your problem the trade deficit?
It's not easy to confuse. If we didn't have trade surpluses and we didn't have a Fed that left rates at zero, maybe the pain of overspending would have hit home much sooner.
Rick, if you don't have the trade deficit, then you won't, and everything that's manufactured here, you're not going to collect the revenue that you want, I think, from those tariffs.
I think Trump would be happy with that.
I think the people who used to talk about economic freedom are suddenly talking about something a little different. That there was a time when people were like...
I've never talked about economic freedom. I talked about I've never been a fan of globalism. Never.
But you're a fan of the government telling us where and how we can buy and how much we ought to pay for it and what kind of industries business ought to do and where Apple ought to source it. That's what you're in favor of, Rick.
Out of the station during FDR, pal.
What was that? Wait, you're going back to the 30s?
You know what? All of the highfalutin government telling us what to do, that's been around a lot longer than Trump's been in politics.
So Trump is just continuing and making it worse, Rick. Is that what you're saying?
No. Maybe what he's doing is lighting the firecracker that'll finally end it with a big pop.
But with more government intrusion into the decision-making of both consumers and businesses.
You know what? Let people buy things made in America, period.